So we had Matt Booty from Microsoft on the podcast a while ago, and he had some kind words to say about the Outer Worlds and what the future might hold for Outer Worlds. Can I read you his quote and get your reaction?
Sure.
Okay, great. So I was talking about just like with the studios they purchase and whether they'd want those studios to be fully Xbox exclusive moving forward, or I guess I should say Microsoft exclusive, versus like still letting them release games third party and whatnot. And this game is coming out to everything, to be clear. But he says, yeah, I think that'd be that kind of game, talking about the future of the Outer Worlds as an Xbox exclusive. He says, and from what we've seen of the Outer Worlds, my hope is that it's something that we can build, that it really becomes an enduring franchise that really starts to grow and that we can help expand. I think it's a great universe they've created. I think about what are the things that you need for a franchise to bear weight. Does that feel like an extra amount of responsibility, the idea that Microsoft is champing at the bit to get their hands on this franchise?
Well, hopefully they'll let us keep developing it. I think that it's kind of what you originally said. It's nice to hear that. It's nice to have the people who have purchased your company have such faith in what you're doing. And the fact that it is this corporate dystopia was ironic. But we haven't heard anything from them about that. They've just been very supportive. The marketing support they've given us has been really fantastic. So far so good. It's going really well.
Yeah, I don't really think the idea that this could become an enduring franchise is something that adds responsibility to me. It's fairly natural. Like the Outer Worlds feels like a natural setting to write in. It's very easy to write in. I think it lends itself very well to dark humor. It lends itself very well to funny storytelling, to adventure. I think it sits really well in this broad spectrum of stylized science fiction that we have. There's like Fallout, there's BioShock, and there's us. And we obviously draw from a bunch of different sources, but I think we're distinct. And I would love to see the Outer Worlds turn into like a lasting franchise. That would be awesome.
Yeah. And we all know that money's great. But is there something that might worry you about, like, all right, Outer Worlds 2, here's Microsoft's $400 million, go. Do you want to keep this a smaller project moving into the future?
That's a balancing act because hopefully it's successful enough where people want more of it, and success breeds its own kind of requirements. As the budgets go up, there's more concern about the direction you might take the project or the franchise, and we haven't seen any of that yet, obviously. But so I don't necessarily know that we'd want this to be a $400 million game. I mean, I like a smaller budget. We have to grow with the times and be competitive. So this was a very small budget for this style of game, and hopefully we're bigger next time around. But I'd like to keep it a little bit on the smaller side. I feel like that gives us more creative control in terms of what is in the game. It helps us focus. It helps us make a polished game.
Yeah.
It feels better to me. Plus, we don't want like a 250 person team. Having a team where 70 people is a large team, but it still feels like a little bit of a smaller team. People on the project don't feel like they're just part of just doing one thing over and over and over again. They can feel like they're part of the creative process. That's very important to me, that people who are working on the project feel like their voices are being heard and that they have a say in what we're doing.
Yeah. Do you feel like this franchise could work in a fully open world in the future?
Possibly. I mean, the thing there that's difficult is that, well, not difficult, but I think the franchise leans a little bit away from that.
Yeah.
In that, it's a pulpy space sci-fi opera where you're a guy or woman who flies from place to place, exploring a solar system. So to have one giant map kind of like defeats that. Depending on the size of each map, that's time, that's resources. And, we're really interested to hear people's feedback on how they feel about the length of the game. Because right now, a lot of people who have played it, jump right back in to play a different type of character. And that seems to be a really positive experience for them, which is what we were hoping. So if then we turn around and make something that's 80 hours long, whether that would contain that same kind of excitement for them, whether that would be better or worse, we have to wait and hear from the fans on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Go ahead.
I'd be curious about that too. I'm always skeptical of this idea that seems to be going around in AAA development, that open world is kind of the standard, that if you're going to have a very big budget game, that it should be open world. I think It's very easy to get burnt out on open world games because they tend to be so sprawling, so massive that every open world game you play tends to be kind of the same thing. Go here, collect that, see that landmark. I think there is a lot of value in having an open-ended game that is still structured around individual discrete levels. And it also tends to be easier to develop. I am always a fan of making the most of the budget that you have. I think that's what we did in this game. We didn't have a huge budget to start with. We had a relatively small team, but we concentrated on using that budget wisely to make a game that would satisfy what we're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and the fact that it's so open-ended and that we really want to react to what the players are doing, if it's a little bit more contained play spaces, that gives us much more control over how many different ways they can approach a situation, which ironically makes the players feel like they have more control and the game reacts better to them or to their choices.
For sure. It's just so refreshing to play a game like this, and it's like, oh, it almost reminds me of the structure of the first Mass Effect. I'm sure a lot of people have made that comparison, but it's like, I'm craving that.
I think about that a lot. The fact that Mass Effect does kind of the same thing. It is a pretty open-ended game, but there are individual discrete levels that you can go to, and yet it feels like a big, expansive galaxy where you can kind of go everywhere. That, I think, is a very valid way to make RPGs also.
Yeah, and as we learned with Mass Effect Andromeda, opening that world up even more, it has its consequences. It's tricky.
It has some problems, yeah.
It's really difficult. That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.